Hello, this is Robert Rickover. I'm an Alexander Technique teacher in Lincoln, Nebraska. And my guest today is Jacqueline Novikov, an Alexander Technique teacher trainee in the Boston area. And she is a singer. She is also a private voice teacher. She's the mother of three boys. I bet that's a handful.
Mhm.
And well, best of all, she's an avid listener of this podcast. What more could we ask for? Jacqueline, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to
So,
talk to you.
um, could you start by giving our viewers and listeners, when this becomes a podcast, your short elevator kind of description of the Alexander technique?
Yes, I'll give you the shortest,
Okay.
even though I think uh, teachers and people who learn the technique know that it can encompass many things. But the shortest way I would say it is the Alexander technique is a teaching method that helps you find more easy and efficient ways to use your body in daily life and in specialized activities.
Right, that's good. And among the various specialized activities is, of course, singing, in which you are a singer. Um, so, how did you first even hear about the technique? What was your very first realization that it exists?
I found out about it first from my voice teacher in my undergraduate conservatory training.
Hmm.
We had She was a new teacher in the school. She was, I think, the only teacher that had Alexander training.
Hmm.
She was is not a I don't know if she is now, but she at the time at least she was not a certified Alexander teacher, but she had studied a lot.
Hmm.
Um, and she introduced everyone in my studio to ideas of like breathing over the ball so that you can notice um, the width and length and depth of your breath and your spine gathering and lengthening
Hmm.
during breath. She would do this funny thing, which I never experienced from an actual Alexander teacher, but she'd kind of come up behind us and put her knee next to ours to kind of make sure our knees were unlocked and our hips were unlocked a little bit,
Hmm.
and talked a lot about connecting through the ground.
Hmm.
And I also remember her saying this to me, and I didn't register at the time that, and she was just wonderful. So the way that I remember it is not in a mean way at all, but she kind of commented to me that like I was a highly strung person, and I think she did use those words, but it was not in a mean way at all. Even though I don't
Right.
think I would say that to someone. Um, but I realized eventually that what she meant was that the habits of tension and I guess and stress, dealing with stress that I dealt with in my daily life was affecting my singing, and
Hmm.
that it was getting in the way of my singing.
Right.
And I did not understand that for a long time. I went off to graduate school.
Hmm.
I had a bad experience there with teachers, and that actually led me to a place where I couldn't produce sound without it hurting.
Hmm.
Um, so that was very actually kind of a wake up about there is something in my life that is causing me this pain when I sing and produce sound, which was
Hmm.
just like Alexander's
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
situation.
Right.
A few years later, I would get a sore throat just reading a book to my baby, to my first son.
Hmm.
Um, and around that time, I guess maybe a little after, when I was about, I guess when my son was about 3 years old, I
Hmm.
got a smartphone for the first time, and I started listening to your podcast.
Wow. Okay.
And I had not been to a voice teacher because I
Uh-huh.
was like very uh, self conscious, and I just felt like I couldn't take any kind of criticism, even if it was well intentioned.
Hmm.
Um, but I knew that I wanted to somehow climb out of this hole that I was in.
Right. And so you found a teacher and started taking lessons?
So I listened to your podcast for about 2 years.
Oh, okay.
1 or 2 years before I did that. And I remember some very, actually, and I kind of started working with myself. So I remember some of the episodes on TMJ
Hmm.
that you had. There were 2 episodes. So I
Yep.
started
Yeah.
doing trying those things.
Uh-huh.
And then I went to a teacher.
Mhm.
And then I had my second son and things got crazy.
Mhm.
But then they got so crazy that I felt like I needed to go back to lessons. So
Right.
I made time for that.
Hmm.
And then eventually um, I felt like I wanted more. And I know you had said in your podcast, well, a training program is a great way to get more,
Yes, that
um,
is.
Alexander, for
And that's
yourself.
why a lot of people join training programs.
Yes,
It's a pretty
yes.
intense process and you learn a lot, and you may decide to teach, and you may incorporate it in your singing or teaching or whatever. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
additionally, I someone in my family who also probably had the same patterns of
Hmm.
holding on to stress.
Hmm.
They were going to like massage therapists and doctors and trying to find someone to fix them or to
Hmm.
do something to them to make them feel better. And
Hmm.
I saw them do it and spend so much money and time into that, something that was treating the symptom but not the cause. And I didn't want to go down that road. I wanted, if I was going to spend time and money, I wanted it to be treating the cause and something that I could help myself with and not depend on other people to do it for me.
Right. So how long did it take in terms of lessons before it became clear to you that this work was going to help you with those issues?
So I did have a reduction in neck and shoulder pain.
Hmm.
Um, I guess after I was in the training for about a year and a half.
Hmm.
And it was something that just went away slowly.
Hmm.
And then one day I realized, hey, like I don't feel as old. like
Right.
and my back eventually, like I was picking up my kids all the time, doing chores around the house. I did have lower back pain, and I
Hmm.
thought, oh well, I'm just getting old, but that also disappeared.
Hmm. Wow.
Um, yeah, yeah. So
So
that's pretty
pretty good
exciting. Yeah.
indication that it was helpful.
Yes.
So I assume that you apply the basic Alexander ideas to daily life,
Yes.
vacuuming, stuff like that. But have you found it helpful to apply it to teaching singing?
Absolutely.
Which
So I had benefits in my own singing, even before I started my training.
Mhm.
I had a very tight jaw. I had a habit of keeping my teeth together, holding my teeth together all day, clenching
Right.
at night, um, and working with myself. And just whenever I noticed my teeth were together, just allowing them to come apart. It was
Hmm.
very helpful in my own singing. I had a habit of my jaw opening to one side
Hmm.
unevenly
Hmm.
during singing, and I was able to just let that habit go.
Hmm.
Um, with, I mean, of course, the body is foundational to the voice production.
Hmm.
So, um, talking to my students about notice you know continuing to keep their lower body and their self as a whole in their picture of themselves singing
Hmm.
is very
Hmm.
helpful.
Hmm.
Speaking about the movement of the whole torso during breath and the whole spine, um,
Hmm.
talking about um, relying on the core muscles, the muscles very close to the spine,
Hmm.
to provide you support so that the external layers of muscle in the torso can be soft and flexible for the movement of breathing
Right.
and
Right.
singing.
Yeah.
That's very helpful. Mhm.
And do you find those that they're able to pick up on those ideas pretty easily?
Um, it depends on the student.
Mhm.
I work with mostly high school age and a few younger students,
Oh, okay.
and the way I think about it is just sort of introducing these ideas and this way of thinking to them. We also like means whereby versus end gaming, getting them to think more in a process based way rather than a result based way.
Hmm.
And I just feel like I'm planting these seeds.
Right, right. Yeah. And what are your plans when you be qualified to become a teacher? Do you plan to teach Alexander lessons i- as well as singing lessons using Alexander ideas?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where it's going to go,
Uh-huh.
but the technique has helped me be more comfortable with uncertainty.
Yeah, right.
So I'm just going to start something and start on that path and see what other paths open up.
Right, right. So, for anyone who is a singer or a singing teacher, specifically, who's listening to or watching this, is there any bit of advice you could give them just in terms of, um, well, maybe why they might want to explore the technique? I mean, you've talked about your experience, but do you have any, if you have any other advice for people who are in that profession?
Yes. Luckily, many voice teachers now are into some kind of um, activity, whether it's Alexander Technique or yoga or Feldenkrais. They're into some kind of body awareness
Hmm.
uh, field or approach, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, because I think it is more well known that um, when you're using your body well, your voice will work better.
Hmm.
But um, if voice teachers are trying to correct individual things that are going on with the voice, but not addressing um, the fundamental structure underneath,
Hmm.
then they're not going to be able to help their students
Hmm.
as well, and the students will have a harder time correcting those specific, voice related issues.
And that's because everything is connected with everything else in our body, and that's one of the big points that Alexander, the discoverer of this work, made. I mean, he said you can't just isolate out some part with you without affecting everything. It just doesn't work that way. Yeah. And I like that idea of you're telling your students just be aware they have this entire body. I've noticed when I've worked with high school kids sometimes in the summer, solo singer workshop here, and just getting them to realize that their entire body is producing the sound without any Alexander directions, you might say, just that thought can make a huge difference in someone's voice. So yeah. Anything else you want to add?
Um, I have thought about the many ways that I've changed throughout the study of the technique, and one of the things is that my understanding of what learning is totally different.
Hmm.
I used to think that learning is just sort of putting stuff in someone's brain, like just putting on more.
Hmm.
I didn't realize that it could involve like letting some things go when you didn't need them anymore, or when they weren't serving you, or if they were wrong.
Oh, okay. That's very Alexandrian.
Yes,
I
yes,
mean, that's
exactly.
the Alexander technique is, most people think about solving a problem by doing some new thing. And the Alexander technique approach is, well, first, let's just see if you're already doing something that's getting in your way. So as you say, maybe letting go of some earlier learning, you might say, to make room for the new.
Right.
Yeah.
And it may have been that, and especially, with our habits, we may have needed that habit in the
Yeah,
past,
absolutely.
but now
Yeah.
it's just not serving us the way we had needed it before. So we can let it go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the same with ideas sometimes.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point. I had never really thought about it in that wider context, but sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to add?
Sure. Sure.
Go
I've,
ahead.
I've
Yeah.
many connections I've thought about.
Uh-huh.
Um, I have also noticed that, like in my regular life, I'm less reactive to ideas I disagree with. So
Hmm.
instead of just having that first visceral reaction to an idea that I might disagree with or I'm uncomfortable with, I'm able to maybe have a question come up first. I guess first to just sort of inhibit that reaction if I'm noticing that that's coming up,
Hmm.
and letting go of any idea of what I think is going to happen next.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
that's a
but also,
powerful tool
yes,
for just getting through life, really.
yeah,
All
I,
right. All
yeah.
right. So maybe this would be a good point to end the interview. My guest today is Jacqueline Novikov. She's a singer, a private voice teacher, and an Alexander Technique trainee in the Boston area. And when are you going to be a certified teacher?
Probably in about a year from now.
Well,
So
I'm going
yeah,
to put a link to her website by the interview, and check it out if you're in the Boston area. Does your school have practice teaching for people who are not
we do.
fully?
Yes, we do. Yep.
And could someone contact you about that in the
Yes,
meantime?
I think that's one of the best parts of the training.
Right.
Um,
So
yeah,
you'd be teaching someone before you're certified, but maybe under the supervision of a more senior teacher, right?
correct.
That's how it was in my day anyway. Well, I'll put a link to her site. I'll also put a link to a site about specifically about the Alexander Technique and musicians, and also one about the Alexander Technique generally. So Jacqueline, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much.